And we're going to finish up our unit on sound waves, but not waves altogether. We will still discuss light waves and what we call the electromagnetic spectrum after we finish this chapter here. But let's do a little bit more about sound waves, music, and hearing. Now, this session is mostly definitions, so not a whole lot of actual explanation in addition to what you see on the screen. So this is mostly definition. Are we ready to begin? Here we go. Of course, we have a voice. Every creature has a voice, and God gave humans the ability to speak and sing. There are a few things like parrots that can mock some sounds that they learn to make, but they're not really speaking. They're just repeating sounds that they've heard many times. Here's evidence of God's creation. God gave humans the ability to speak and sing. We can communicate with each other with a very concise spoken language. In fact, many different languages. We can also sing. Now we know that some kinds of birds, they will sing, and those songs actually communicate. So God gave all creatures the ability to communicate, but with us, languages and music. Variances in physical bodies make for the unique voice quality and flexibility. We all have different voices. We all sound differently to each other. And you have to remember that the ranges we talked about before, those are averages. Exactness, though, humans have a lot of that flexibility you see there on the screen. The average range of singing pitches, 100 hertz is considered bass, to 1,000 hertz is considered soprano. Now, you can tell that I have a fairly deep voice. I can sing bass or tenor. I'm not going to get way up there to alto and soprano, and you don't even want to hear me try. But this is the range and the averages that we consider bass and soprano. And of course, all the pitches in between will give us all the various notes that many people can sing or play on musical instruments. Ready? Now, how do we produce sound? You get even better explanation on page 425, but here are some things in our bodies that we use to produce our different sounds. You've heard of voice box. Well, the scientific term for voice box is the larynx. That's made of cartilage and some ligaments that support the vocal cords. We have vocal cords, which are tiny little string-like substances in our voice box that vibrate. The vocal cords relax when we're not speaking, and there's a little valve called the glottis that will be open to allow air in and out. But when we're relaxing and we're not speaking, those vocal cords aren't vibrating. When we speak, we're pushing air across those cords, and the different sounds and pitches that we make come from the vibrations of those vocal cords. Remember, all sounds happen because something vibrates. Our vocal cords will tighten and vibrate when we speak, and that valve called the glottis, that closes. And as the air goes through the vocal cords and the larynx, the different vibrations, again, will give us the different sounds that we produce and the pitches. We get high-pitched voices and low-pitched voices based on the frequencies of the vibrations of those vocal cords and the air coming out. And we get louder and we get softer based on how much force we put into our voice, the strength, the amplitude, the intensity of the wave that we produce. Air passes through those vocal cords. The tighter the cords, the higher pitch. Now remember, frequency determines pitch. So if we tighten up our vocal cords, those cords will vibrate faster and we'll get the higher pitch. And we tend to talk faster too when we try to get higher pitch. Not always, but remember, as we said before, when we try to shout, we typically get the higher pitches as well because we naturally tense up and tighten things up. It's really hard to shout and get a low pitch. I can try to do that. It's really hard to shout and get a lower pitch. But I had to force myself to keep my vocal cords from tightening up. Looser chords will give us that lower pitch. So when we speak and we get high pitch and we get lower pitch, That's because we're tightening and loosening up the vocal cords, and we do that naturally. We don't even have to think about it. But this is how we produce sound when speaking. Ready? The throat and the sinuses always allow the voice to resonate and amplify. Now, resonate means one vibration causes another object to vibrate at the same frequency. Okay, resonance is when a vibrating note, such as a musical instrument, plays a note, or maybe we sing over piano strings, and the note we sing is based on the frequency of the wave produced. And that wave transfers energy onto the strings of the piano, and the strings that have the same frequencies as the note we played, or multiples of those frequencies, may vibrate just enough to produce a sound. And of course, the sinuses, those are cavities in the nose and eye areas inside, and that's where amplification comes. Well, consider a cone that people may speak through, a megaphone, but non-electronic one. Or sometimes we just cup our hands together to try to get the sound to come out a little more loudly. And I've done that with you guys during class when I want to emphasize something. Our tongue, our teeth, and our lips shape the sound chambers to give off equality. Now that cone, or just cupping your hands together, that allows constructive interference of the sound waves. Remember, we've discussed that before. When the compressions of the waves mesh together and actually build up in size, that means the amplitude is bigger, therefore the intensity or the loudness gets larger as well. But our tongue, our teeth, and our lips, we change the shapes of our mouth, and that's going to help us produce many of the different sounds that we do. The diaphragm is a muscle in the chest that pushes the air up through the larynx, the vocal cords, and then of course the throat and the sinuses, and then we'll shape our tongue, teeth, and lips, and this is how we produce all these sounds. This, to me, is more evidence of God's creation, God giving us the ability to do all this and make the different sounds that form the words that we use to communicate, or the singing and the music that we play with the instruments, that we have the intelligence to build those instruments. The stronger we push, the louder we sound. So when we want to shout, "Hey!" notice that we push our diaphragms up. That will cause more air forcefully through all the systems in our body that will make us speak. That will tighten up our vocal cords, so we'll get a louder volume and normally a higher pitch as well. The stronger we push, the louder the sound. Ready? Right, see the picture of the ear. It's not the greatest picture, but it has enough for what I want to talk about. You notice, and we have two of them obviously, we have the outer ear. This is what people see, and there's so much more to the ear, and I'm sure you knew this already, that people don't see. So we call this the outer ear. The chamber right in here will be the middle ear, from the opening to the eardrum, which has a scientific name you'll see in a moment, and then the bones inside, hammer, anvil, and stirrup, I'm sure you've heard of those, and then the eustachian tube that will carry what we hear to the brain, and then our brain will interpret that sound. The sound enters the auditory canal. Well, first, you see the eardrum right here. And that eardrum is curved. If you take your finger and run along the edge of your ear, you'll feel that curvature. Well, what that does, think of a satellite dish, taking the signals from space, and as the signals come in, hitting that curved dish focuses all those waves to a microphone. And then the microphone will send that inside to the receiver, and then you'll be able to watch your TV shows. Well, think of the eardrum similar. Actually, there it is again. God created something first that humans take credit for inventing. We have the curvature that's going to take sound waves and focus those waves right into the auditory canal right here. And the constructive interference, by bouncing around of those waves, will magnify that wave. And here we have the tympanum, or the eardrum, a small thin membrane that will vibrate. And when that vibration happens, the wave gets strengthened enough and passes through until the wave gets inside to these bones. Now that eardrum is very sensitive, and we know that if we get too loud of a sound even an instant that doesn't last very long, we can do damage to the eardrum. And we talked before about the decibel levels last time actually. And too strong decibel levels over periods of time can cause damage to that eardrum, and then the eardrum won't send the wave inside to the inner ear as effectively. And then that's when damage to our hearing can happen. That eardrum is very sensitive. We don't want actual physical things to get in there and possibly puncture that eardrum. Not only is that very painful, but it will really mess up hearing. Ready? Inside the ear, once the sound wave passes through that tympanum, that wave is now in the middle ear, and you saw the picture of that on the last page. There are 3 bones inside, and everybody has these bones: hammer, anvil, and stirrup. Notice I colored the letters red and said that has as visual and audio clues to help you remember the 3 bones. Everybody has these 3 bones: hammer, anvil, and stirrup. They're called that way because the bones are shaped somewhat like a hammer that we use to hit nails, an anvil that old-style blacksmiths would use to shape the horseshoes back in the Western days, and stirrups that horse riders put their feet in there and help get up onto the saddle and onto the horse. These bones vibrate, and the vibration causes more constructive interference as a wave just kind of bounces around in among these 3 bones. And these bones can amplify a sound wave up to 37 times stronger than when the wave enters the middle ear. And by the time that amplification is finished, once again, that wave is now 37 times stronger, and then the wave goes on to the brain. Ready? The inner ear is where the sound wave travels through the eustachian tube. After the bones on that picture, you saw that long eustachian tube. There is a structure called the cochlea, and then nerves that will take that wave to the brain and let the brain interpret all the characteristics to produce the sounds that we end up hearing. We also have fluids in our ear. Those fluids will help carry the sound wave to the ear. Didn't mean to do that. And then those fluids, again, God knows what he's doing. Those fluids help us actually walk. So did you realize that your ears can help you walk? Because those fluids will help balance, and your toes also help balance. And the movement keep us steady by detecting the body's orientation. So if we lean over too far to one side or too far forward, those fluids are going to detect that and send our brain a signal to, hey, we need to straighten things up now, or we may fall over. And some people lose that ability. One of my brothers had to have 2 toes removed because of a staph infection. Well, because of those toes missing, he had to teach himself how to walk again in his late 40s. He's now in his upper 50s, but he had to go through that. Did you realize that toes help you balance? Well, some people lose some of the fluids in their ears, and that will throw their balance off, and they'll have a little bit trouble walking upright without stumbling. But unless we're affected in that way, we all have these fluids. Our ears help us walk by helping us maintain balance, as well as bring the sounds to our brain so we know what we're hearing. Ready? Here's a term: acoustic amplification, which simply means making sound louder. Amplitude, that's the part of the wave that determines the strength and the loudness and the intensity of the sound. So when we amplify a sound wave, we make the sound stronger by increasing the amplitude. We have electronic amplifiers that we just turn up the volume. We will see a video about how that happens. Well, that'll be a small part of that video. I mentioned the megaphone earlier. And let me see if I can find my megaphone since I'm thinking of that. Okay, I found it. Here's my megaphone right here. It's yellow. It may not show up that way on your video, but I talk into the cone, and you notice that the voice changes a little and may even sound a little louder. Well, we have constructive interference going on inside that cone. All right, I'm going to put that away now. The megaphone sends sound energy in one direction. Well, in an electronic speaker, there are electromagnets that will push and pull on a cone inside the speaker, and the harder the push outward, the stronger that sound wave will be because of more energy being put into the wave. Therefore, the wave will have a bigger amplitude. Think of enclosed spaces with hard, smooth surfaces, and notice that you may get some echoes, or you may even get some amplification of the sound wave. Reflection and constructive interference is the reason that the waves get stronger with those hard, smooth surfaces. I mentioned this just a few minutes ago. As the wave bounces off those smooth surfaces, the compressions build on each other, which means a bigger amplitude. Remember that amplitude is how big the compression is. And if we get bigger amplitudes, we get stronger waves. And with sound, that means louder sounds. So we just amplified. With an electronic speaker, turning up the volume actually means sending more electricity into those electromagnets, so those magnets will push and pull and push again on those cones, and those cones will force more energy into the wave. All right. Acoustics is building the room's effect on a wave. Right? I said that poorly. A building or a room's effect on sound waves. Go into a studio or to a performance hall and you check out the acoustics. How well will the sound waves bounce around to allow everybody to get a good chance to hear the music or the performance very well? Think of the Globe Theater. Okay, you ninth graders will study Shakespeare. If you haven't already, you will soon. The Globe Theater was curved so that sound waves will bounce off the smooth, hard surface and go out toward the audience. Plan to have an in-class activity where I can demonstrate this simply by using an overhead projector and a little baking pan full of water and some different shapes of blocks. And we'll be able to see how that happens. But acoustics is making the room have a good effect on the sound waves. Ready? I told you this was almost all definition. Speakers use cones and electromagnets. I started to talk about that just a few moments ago. When we allow enough electricity in, magnets will push and pull on the air many times per second. Now they're made quietly so we don't hear that banging around as those magnets push and pull the cones. But the sound energy travels through, and the bigger the push, the more forceful the wave comes out of that speaker with more energy, bigger amplitude, bigger compression, louder sound. And again, just turning up the volume means we send more electrical energy in to make this process happen even more. And that is acoustic amplification, in that case using electricity and magnets, where that cone that I showed you a few moments ago, that's just letting things use the surface without adding any electricity. The stronger the magnetic field, the stronger the push, which simply means, again, turn up the volume, allow more electricity in to make a stronger magnetic field, and then we get a stronger push and a louder sound. And that's why we call speakers, we also call them amplifiers. Ready? Now, we mentioned sonar and echolocation just a little bit on the last set of notes, but here's a little bit more about them. Sonar is simply an acronym, which means the letters in sonar stand for words. S-O is sound, N is navigation, A is and R is ranging. So sonar actually means sound, navigation, and ranging. And these are machines used on many water vessels, many boats or submarines, and we said this before, used to find objects in the sea. These machines will send out ultrasonic waves. Now it just says sound waves, but ultrasonic sound waves. And a computer will detect the reflection of those waves and use distance equals rate times time, that equation, to determine how the wave gets back into the computer, and then the computer will put an image on the screen, and people who are trained to read that image will know what object has sunk and where that object is. Some animals have the God-given ability to use sonar, but when that occurs naturally in animals, we don't call that process sonar, we say echolocation. which is the natural sonar. Again, God created this first, and then humans invented a sonar machine. Natural sonar used to find prey. Bats and dolphins are two animals commonly known to use echolocation. And as I said before, either, hey, there's my dinner, or oops, somebody thinks I'm its dinner, so I'm out of here. So when the machine uses the sound waves, we call that sonar, but when an animal does the same thing, we call that echolocation. Ready? We defined these briefly last time, a little bit more. Infrasonic and ultrasonic waves. Infrasonic, remember, means waves below 20 hertz. Infra means below, and sonic in this case refers to the average range that humans can hear. Again, that is between 20 and 20,000 waves per second, and we call waves per second hertz. The large amplitudes in these waves mean these waves have high energy, not just high, but tremendous amounts of energy. These waves are low frequency, as you can see right there, but the amount of energy in these waves can cause earthquakes. And traveling through the ground, we call those seismic waves, like you saw in the last set of notes. Elephants communicate with ground vibrations. Elephants will stomp on the ground, and there's so much energy in those sound waves that travel through the ground that elephants 10 to 15 kilometers apart from each other. That's a long way. That sound wave will travel through the ground. We may be able to feel the vibrations, but we're not going to hear the sound because infrasonic waves are below what humans can hear. But that's a long distance for a sound wave to travel. Giraffes use voices. They have different voices that they can send out between 14 and 40 hertz. So they're higher pitched frequencies we may be able to hear, but they're lower pitched, the 14 end of that little spectrum, we're probably not going to hear, but they can communicate with each other using different sounds. Now, my wife is a big time cat lover. I mean, big time. If I go first, she'd be that crazy cat lady at the end of the block with 50 to 100 cats in the house. But cats, they purr at low frequencies, 20 to 50 hertz, and that purring helps them get some comfort. If they're feeling scared, they may purr just to calm themselves down, or cats are emotional creatures too. If they know that their humans are a little upset, then they'll sit on your lap, they'll purr, and that'll help calm some humans down. So they can also use their purr. The vibrations can help them also recover from certain injuries. They bring comfort to each other and to many humans as well. So infrasonic waves can be extremely beneficial, and these are just 3 examples. God knows exactly what he's doing. Ready? Ultrasonic waves, remember, are waves above 20,000 hertz, 20,000 waves per second. The sonar machines and the echolocation use these ultrasonic waves. These have high frequencies, which means these waves are very short in wavelength. Remember, in a sound wave, wavelength is compression to compression. Those compressions are very close together. Because there are so many compressions very close together, these waves also have tremendous amounts of energy. High energy, but that energy fades very quickly. So ultrasonic waves do not travel as far as infrasonic waves might. That's because these waves lose their energy very quickly. They also reflect off surfaces very easily, but the reflection will make more energy get absorbed by the surface. So again, the wave will fade quickly. These are used for short-range sonar. Now, a submarine's not going to use sonar to go from the coast of Florida and then send all the way through the Atlantic Ocean into Africa. That's not going to happen. That's too long of a range. But for short range, shorter distances, these sonars are terrific. And sonograms, that's when we can see inside the human body, not just to see the baby inside mama, but sonograms, also called ultrasounds, can be used to study other things in the body as well. Ready? Okay, here's a picture. Now, I just got this. This isn't my son. I just kind of found this and put it up there. But the picture of the baby using ultrasonic waves, we call this image an ultrasound or a sonogram. But these waves can also be used to see other things inside the body besides the baby inside mother. That is an actual human baby there. Okay, some people get their heart and their lungs studied by using these ultrasonic waves, an ultrasound, and then the physicians can see what's on the screen, and it's pretty cool. I've had this done to help see what happens. You know, you've heard that I burp a lot. Well, I've had to get some different various ultrasounds to find the problem. Problem is in my digestive system, but they're going to study heart and lungs first because of the most crucial body muscles and organs. Okay. Diagnose and treat injuries and certain diseases. Many ultrasounds can also help damaged cells repair themselves. So maybe without using medicines, some of these ultrasonic waves can really help the human body heal. These things can also be used to break up kidney stones. Those things are really painful. But ultrasounds, remember, it's such high energy, can break up those kidney stones because of the fast vibration. Veterans may use these on the animals, or veterinarians, I should say, may use these on the animals that we may bring in when the animals are sick. Many pieces of machinery and pipelines use ultrasounds. I don't know too much about these two things right here, how ultrasounds are involved, but we do know that ultrasounds have, this is one of their main things that we think of, but many other uses as well, including sonar machines. Ready? All right, that's going to do it for today. Hopefully that will help you understand some uses for the sound waves that we've been studying. Catch you next time. Good night.